It was exactly 7:57 a.m. when Elijah Morrison stepped out of the black Lincoln sedan, its glossy frame catching the early sun as it circled in front of the Solaris Grand Hotel in downtown San Jose. He paused for just a second, adjusted the cuff of his navy suit. Sharp lapels, crisp shirt, polished leather shoes from Milan. Everything about him was intentional, clean, exact. A man who knew where he was going and why. But the valet didn't move. Elijah stood with his keys in hand, just loosely enough to signal he wasn't waiting to be impressed. The young valet, barely 20, glanced his way, then immediately turned to the silver SUV pulling in behind him. Looked straight through Elijah like he wasn't even there. "Hey, can you park this one?" the valet asked his coworker, nodding past Elijah like he was part of the curb. Elijah said nothing, took a breath through his nose. Calm, steady. He turned, walked to the side lot, parked his own car. No one stopped him. No one helped. No one asked. As he crossed the drive again, he glanced at the tall glass doors. No big signage, no red carpet, just clean glass and quiet lobby light. You'd never guess what was about to go down behind them. Inside, the air smelled like fresh espresso and faint lemon oil. The front desk was slick white marble, staffed by a woman tapping away at a touchscreen with nails the color of bare rose. She barely looked up. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyes already sliding back to the screen. "I'm here for the Nexus Leadership Summit," Elijah said. "We booked the Alder Room, 2 floors, and executive catering." The woman frowned like she didn't hear the words but recognized the tone. Professional, certain. "Do you work for one of the vendors?" she asked. "I'm the CEO," he said simply. She blinked. Not disbelief, just discomfort. "Right. We're still prepping the space. Could you wait outside for a moment?" Elijah's voice stayed level. "I'm also the keynote speaker." Still no apology, no spark of understanding. Just that flat, stretched smile. "It'll just be a few more minutes." Another employee appeared then. Young guy, khakis and blazer, with a walkie clipped to his belt. He looked Elijah up and down like he was searching for a lanyard, or maybe a tool belt. "You with security?" he asked, lowering his voice. "I'm Elijah Morrison," Elijah replied. "I run the summit you're hosting today." Silence. The guy tilted his head toward the door. "We'll call someone to come get you, sir. Just give us a few." Outside again. Back on the sidewalk like he'd wandered into the wrong place. Elijah glanced at his watch. 8:09 a.m. His speech wasn't until 9. Technically, he had time. But something in his chest pulled taut. It wasn't anger, not quite. Something colder. He looked across the street. Someone pushed a stroller into the coffee shop. A bus rumbled to a stop. The world moved on. And he stood there. A man who had built a tech firm from scratch. Raised 8 figures in capital. Spoken at the White House. Treated like a delivery guy because he didn't look like someone they expected. His phone buzzed. "Elijah?" It was Jordan, his assistant, calm but alert. "Just checking. Did they greet you yet?" "Not exactly," Elijah said. He was watching the hotel doors as he spoke. "What do you mean, not exactly?" "They asked me to wait outside." Silence. Not shock. Just understanding. Jordan had worked with Elijah long enough to know this tone. Low. Measured. This wasn't just a report. It was a record. "Want me to come down?" Jordan asked. "Numbers stay with the early investors. They'll start arriving soon." He ended the call, adjusted his tie, walked back toward the doors. Inside, the woman behind the desk saw him, but her expression didn't change. "I thought I asked you to wait outside, sir." "I waited," he said plainly. "Now I'd like to speak with your event coordinator." She paused. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "founder and CEO of Morrison Adaptive. We booked the entire second floor and the Alder Room for today's summit." Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe, or an urge to double-check the files. She turned to the young guy with the walkie. "Can you call Lacey from events?" He nodded and walked off. Elijah stood there, still, not looking away. 2 of his board members stepped off the elevator, badges visible, deep in conversation. The hotel manager appeared instantly to greet them. Smiles, handshakes, a different welcome altogether. Elijah raised a hand slightly. The manager hesitated, then turned and walked away. Quick pause. If you're still watching, that means something's clicking. Hit like, drop your take below, or send this to someone who needs to hear it. Elijah didn't raise his voice, didn't clench his fists. He simply turned back toward the front desk, standing there with the same stillness he'd honed over a decade in rooms where people underestimated him the moment he walked in. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "I'm going to say this one more time." She looked up slower this time. "I'm not a guest. I'm not security. I'm not making a delivery." He held her gaze. "I'm the reason this building is full today. I built the summit you're hosting. I personally brought in 60 of the most respected investors and tech executives on the West Coast. My company, Morrison Adaptive, paid for the Alder Room, the VIP suites, the catering, and every ounce of today's programming." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. "I'm not here for a badge," Elijah said. "I wrote the contract. I funded the event. I chose this venue because I believed it matched the professionalism of the people I invited." A breath passed between them. Then the man with the walkie returned. "Lacey from events is on her way," he said. Then after a pause, one of those moments when tone shifts and defenses crack, he asked quietly, "You're really the CEO?" Elijah nodded. "I didn't just start this company. I wrote the first line of code. I made the pitch decks. I signed the deal with this hotel. And I came here this morning prepared to speak about leadership." They both stared at him now. Something had shifted. The tension hadn't broken, but it twisted, no longer fueled by disbelief, but by something closer to discomfort. Maybe even regret. He added, "We have $5 billion in managed assets. And this morning, I nearly trusted you to help us grow that." That landed. The front desk clerk stepped back slightly. Whether out of respect or panic, Elijah couldn't tell. The man with the walkie looked away. For the first time, nobody asked him to wait. Just then, Lacey stepped into the lobby. She wore all black and carried a leather-bound folder, already flipping through notes as she walked. "Mr. Morrison, so sorry for the confusion. We weren't notified you'd arrived," she said, reaching out to shake his hand. "The Alder Room is fully prepped. Coffee's already being served. Please follow me." No excuses, no explanations, just rapid correction. The staff who dismissed him minutes earlier now moved aside like parting doors. Elijah didn't gloat. He didn't glance back. He followed Lacey through the lobby, past the desk, past the man with the walkie, past the woman who now stood stiff, her cheeks colored slightly pink. Whether from embarrassment or something else, Elijah couldn't be sure. He didn't care to know. What they failed to recognize wasn't a man sneaking into a space he didn't belong in. What they refused to see was a man who had built the space, owned it, designed the experience, paid the invoices, and who had stood still long enough to give them a chance to correct themselves. They hadn't. But this wasn't going to be a lesson in anger. It would be a lesson in memory. And Elijah had a long one. They moved down the hall toward the conference wing, neutral carpeting, abstract art lining the walls. Hotel lighting soft but sterile. The Alder Room sat at the far end, its door already propped open, lights dimmed, name placards placed at each seat. Lacey walked him through the setup, checking off details. "The AV team has everything queued. We've got wireless mics, backup projectors, a water station near the podium, and light snacks near the back wall. Mr. Jordan is inside now, checking levels." Elijah paused outside the doors. He glanced in just long enough to see a few familiar faces gathering. Investors, operators, reporters, all laughing lightly, sipping coffee, unaware of the moment that had just unfolded behind the front desk. He didn't walk to the podium. Not yet. Instead, he stepped into the speaker lounge, closed the door behind him, and pulled out his phone. He wasn't angry. He wasn't vindicated. He was tired. Tired of standing in rooms that looked through him. Tired of assuming that excellence alone would shield him from assumption. Tired of trading composure for small recognition. He stared at his reflection in the dark glass window for a long second, then called the one person who always understood when the time had come to move. Elijah didn't hesitate. Inside the quiet lounge, he sat down, loosened his tie, not in frustration, but in clarity. Then he called the one person who always understood the weight behind his calm. Tamara picked up on the second ring. "Talk to me. We're moving the summit." There was no gasp, no panic. Tamar had been with him too long to be surprised. Today, she asked. Elijah leaned back in the chair, one hand resting on the folder of his keynote notes. Right now, she exhaled, slow but steady. You want to relocate 50 people, AV crew, catering, guest experience, in under an hour? I don't want to, Elijah said. I need to. She didn't push, didn't ask what happened. She already knew enough. Hayes or Parkview, she asked. Hayes, Elijah said. They've got the backup layout. Tell them we're en route. Make sure they understand this isn't a delay. It's a decision. Tamara's fingers were already typing. Got it. I'll have their coordinator reactivate the floor plan and redirect staff. What about the hotel contracts? Cancel everything. Conference rooms, suites, all of it. You know there's going to be penalties, she warned. Charge them to me personally. And if they don't release the blocks? Push, Elijah said. But don't argue, just walk. Tamara paused for a beat. Then, understood. He hung up. No raised voice, no slammed fists. Just motion, clean and surgical. Elijah stared at the dark glass in front of him, catching a faint reflection. The suit, the stillness. But the exhaustion behind his eyes had nothing to do with the day's agenda. This wasn't about this morning. It was about all the mornings that came before it, the ones where he smiled through it, shrank himself down to make others comfortable, waited politely while the room caught up to who he already was, the ones where dignity had to be worn like armor. A knock came. Jordan stepped in, tablet in hand. You want to run through the slides one more time? Elijah looked at him for a long second. Number change of plans. Jordan's brow lifted, but he didn't flinch. We're leaving? I already made the call. A beat passed. Jordan nodded. They didn't even try, did they? Nope. You want me to tell the board? I'll speak to them myself. You start moving people. Quietly, no announcements. Just tap-ins and redirection. Jordan was already walking. Got it. I'll start with the Angel group and push west toward the corporate tables. Backup bus is 5 minutes out. And Elijah, he stopped at the doorway. They'll follow you. No hesitation. Elijah nodded once. That was all. Within 5 minutes, Jordan began quietly passing the message across the altar room floor. A whisper to one group, a subtle nod to another. Emergency venue shift, just a few blocks over. Better setup, you'll see why soon. Tamara was already rerouting the transportation, coordinating Hayes staff, checking in with the AV team, shifting lunch deliveries, updating signage, and reformatting programs in real time. And not one person at Solaris had a clue what was happening. Elijah returned to the altar room only once, to grab his laptop and notes. That's when the hotel manager finally appeared, face tight, folder in hand. Mr. Morrison, I understand there may have been a miscommunication at the front desk this morning. I'd like to personally apologize. Elijah zipped his laptop case slowly. You didn't offend me, he said calmly. You just disqualified yourselves. A pause. This isn't about ego. It's about standards. The manager blinked. Can we make this right? Elijah slung the strap over his shoulder. You had your chance. And that was it. No more. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do isn't to make noise. It's to move and take everyone worth listening to with him. The shift didn't come with shouting. It came in silence. The kind you only notice after it's already hollowed a space out. At 8:43 a.m., the Solaris Grand still looked pristine. Glass polished, signage in place, coffee steaming on silver trays. But something was off, and the front desk could feel it. The energy had shifted. Staff began noticing gaps in the room. Conversations thinning out. A few guests stepping outside, talking on phones, never coming back in. The front desk clerk, the same one who had asked Elijah to wait outside, kept checking her screen, refreshing the guest list, glancing toward the elevators like maybe something would settle back into place. It didn't. Gina, she whispered into the headset. Something's wrong. The conference guests, they're leaving. In the back loading bay, Gina, the events coordinator, was helping the AV crew box up backup mics and cables when the call came through. What do you mean leaving? She asked. I mean, they're checking out. Fast. Some just walked out. No explanation. Gina turned, looked through the narrow hallway window toward the lobby. Sure enough, suitcases rolled across the marble. Exit doors opened and didn't swing shut behind new arrivals. Then the restaurant manager walked over, holding a clipboard. We've got cancellations coming in from suite level. Guests calling to close out early. Brunch head count just dropped by 25. What's going on? The front desk clerk fielded another call. Housekeeping says rooms are empty, bags gone. Some guests left their badges in the wastebasket. The manager's phone buzzed next. It was the executive sales liaison. The Morrison Group just terminated all bookings, every reservation, Alder room, executive suites, catering, everything. Effective immediately. That's not possible, it's summit day. But it was, and it had just happened. There were no headlines, no outrage, just dominoes, tipping, one after another. A security guard stepped over to the manager. That SUV out front? It picked up Morrison and a few others. They're gone. In less than 20 minutes, the event the hotel had prepped for months had vanished. Not with conflict, but with purpose. Across town, the Hayes Hotel was already adjusting. Guests were being greeted with warmth. Staff moved with purpose and polish. Name placards were updated, coffee refreshed, AV lines tested. The keynote screen in the atrium now read, Nexus Leadership Summit, Grand Atrium, second floor. Back at Solaris, the conference signage still stood in the lobby. Bright, printed, centered, but now it looked like a forgotten set piece from a canceled show. A few guests wandered out, glancing around in confusion. One tapped a staff member. Hey, I was told to meet someone here for a leadership panel. The staffer hesitated. You might want to call your coordinator. No one from the hotel seemed to have the answers anymore. No one from the hotel seemed to matter anymore. The Alder room, once full of polished shoes and tight agendas, was already half empty. Half-full trays of croissants sat untouched. Water pitchers beaded with condensation. A team from catering stood by the wall, still waiting for go-ahead to plate entrees that would never be served. By 9:15, two-thirds of the summit guests were already seated at the Hayes. Elijah was standing near the front, calm and collected, final notes in hand. He hadn't needed to announce the move, hadn't needed to explain what happened at the Solaris. He simply made a choice, and the people followed. Not because he demanded it, but because he didn't flinch when it mattered. And the building he left behind, it wasn't angry, it was irrelevant. And that was the point. The sun had pushed higher now, soft shadows fading as Elijah stood in the center of the Hayes Hotel's sunlit atrium. Light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warming the polished stone underfoot. Everything about the space felt intentional. Open, bright, inviting. Like it had been waiting for them all along. Guests were seated, coffee in hand, conversations buzzing quietly as AV techs gave final checks. Elijah stepped up to the podium. No fanfare, no mic tap, just a clear voice and steady presence. Before we begin, he said, I want to thank you all for your flexibility this morning. The room quieted. I know the venue change was sudden, but where we choose to gather says something about what we value. A few heads nodded, a subtle murmur of agreement. I chose our original location based on reputation, 5-star ratings, proximity, professional image. He paused, let that sit. But what I was reminded of this morning is that polished lobbies and big-name branding don't guarantee something simple. He looked out over the crowd. His voice never rose. Respect. The silence now was full. I was asked to wait outside. Twice. No one asked my name. No one checked a list. I parked my own car. I explained who I was. I reintroduced myself, and none of it mattered. A few jaws clenched, eyes narrowed. Some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Some of you might be surprised by that. Some probably aren't. Elijah rested his hands on the edges of the podium, not leaning forward, not trying to persuade, just speaking plainly. But I don't believe in raising my voice to be heard. I don't believe in dragging people down to make a point. He looked around slowly. I believe in walking forward, and that's what we're doing, somewhere that sees us, hears us, and treats our business and our time with the seriousness it deserves. Scattered applause started near the front. It grew as others joined. Not loud, not performative, just honest. In the back, Jordan stood with arms folded, watching. No notes in hand, just pride across his face. Back at the Solaris, no one was clapping. The signage was being stripped from easels. Coffee carts wheeled away untouched. A small team from facilities folded linens that had never been used. Gina was making calls now, not to schedule, but to apologize, to explain, to stall. The general manager stood at the edge of the empty Alder room, holding a formal letter in his hand. The top line read, "Effective immediately, Morrison Adaptive is terminating all agreements with Solaris Grand Hotel." No threats, no press release, no social media firestorm, just a decision, final and expensive. A regional rep from the hotel chain tried to do damage control, offering Elijah free suites for the next quarter, complimentary conference space, even spa credits for visiting guests. The email never made it past Tamara. She marked it handled. No need to forward, because Elijah wasn't interested in apologies. He was interested in reminders. And now, without saying much at all, he had become one. The story wasn't on the evening news. It didn't trend. But it moved, quietly. Through group chats, boardrooms, whispers passed between executives and operations teams. A few days later, 3 other companies quietly canceled their upcoming bookings with Solaris. No explanation. Just a line. "We've decided to move in a different direction." No one shouted, no one blamed. But inside those rooms, the message was clear. We saw what happened, and we won't risk our name on silence. By Monday, the story had already started to move, quietly like a current underneath calm water. Not a scandal, not a headline, just motion. At first, it was a few texts passed between coordinators. Then it was conversations whispered between corporate assistants booking venues for next quarter. "You hear what happened with Morrison Adaptive? Yeah, we don't want that kind of exposure. Let's go with the haze." No statements were made, no outrage posted online. But inside 3 separate companies, 2 fintech firms and a healthcare startup, events were relocated, bookings canceled, deposits forfeited. No one said Elijah's name out loud in those meetings. They didn't need to, because his decision, quiet, unflinching, had already spoken. Back at the Solaris, the impact was sinking in. The events manager stood with the head of guest services, both staring at a screen that showed a flurry of withdrawals. Entire blocks disappeared. Catering orders were voided. Executive suites that had been booked solid were now open through the weekend. The hotel's regional sales director tried one last reach out, emailing Tamara with an offer. Complimentary conference space for quarter 3. Full suite upgrades for any Morrison Adaptive guest. Free spa packages for partners. Tamara read it once, then closed the tab. No need to forward, because what they didn't understand, what they still didn't see, was that this wasn't about a refund. It wasn't about freebies. It was about what they allowed to happen on their watch, what they didn't stop, what they didn't correct until the moment was gone. And Elijah, he never replied. He didn't need to, because when trust breaks like that, you don't patch it with discounts. You move on. Meanwhile, a local tech media outlet picked up the story. Not as a takedown, not a smear, just a timeline. What happened? Who saw it? The relocation, the silence, the choice. It landed in inboxes, got forwarded to group chats, made its way into happy hours where young Black professionals raised glasses. Not because Elijah yelled, not because he slammed doors, but because he didn't need to. And that's what made it stick. It wasn't just what he said, it was what he didn't say. At the Morrison Adaptive headquarters, the glass-walled boardroom was full. Senior team on one side, 3 investors from Seattle on the other. "We heard about the venue change," one said. "People are still talking about it." Elijah leaned back in his chair, calm, unbothered. "That a problem for you?" he asked. The lead investor shook his head. "Not at all." Another chimed in. "If anything, it told us more about your leadership than your slide deck ever could." "It's rare," the first added, "to see someone with that kind of control under pressure. That's where trust comes from." Elijah gave a small nod, didn't gloat, didn't thank them, because this wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to play by a rigged rulebook in the first place. Later that night, the office was quiet. Elijah walked the empty floor, passing whiteboards scrawled with diagrams and sticky notes. He stopped at the glass overlooking the city. Jordan stood a few feet away, sipping from a chipped mug. "You see the write-up?" Jordan asked. "I did," Elijah said. "They left out the part where the valet ignored you." "They always leave something out," Jordan shrugged. "Doesn't matter, people know what it was." Elijah nodded slowly. "The ones who needed to see it, they got the message." Outside, the city pulsed like nothing had happened. Traffic steady, headlights slicing through dusk. But inside, everyone who mattered had felt the shift, and they wouldn't forget. The next morning, Elijah stood in his office, cradling a mug of black coffee as sunlight cut a silver path across the skyline. The city felt quieter than usual. Or maybe he was just more still than usual. His jacket was folded neatly over the arm of the chair, tie undone. Just the open collar of a white shirt and a long breath held in his chest. A soft knock came. "Come in," he said without turning. The door opened. A younger voice followed. "You wanted to see me?" It was Marcus Hale, mid-20s, bright but still learning the rhythm of big rooms, one of Morrison Adaptive's junior analysts. He stepped in holding a folder, but it was clear he wasn't here just to review charts. "You can sit," Elijah said gently. Marcus did, resting the folder on his lap but not opening it. I heard what happened at the hotel." He hesitated, eyes darting to the side. "A few of us were talking about it in the break room, and I guess I just wanted to ask, how do you not let it get to you?" Elijah looked at him, not with surprise but with familiarity. He'd been that age, that version. Questions behind steady eyes. Rage without permission to use it. "You think I stayed calm?" Elijah asked. Marcus blinked. "Didn't you?" "No," Elijah said softly. "I just didn't let them see it." He set the coffee on the windowsill, then turned fully toward Marcus. "You know what they saw when I walked into that hotel? A man standing where they didn't think he belonged. That's it. Nothing else mattered. Not the business I built. Not the capital we raised. Not the rooms I paid for." Marcus leaned in, listening close. "So why not confront them?" he asked. "Why not tear into them and let the world see?" Elijah gave a quiet smile. "Because the world already sees," he said. "That's not the problem." He stepped away from the window and sat across from him. "The real fight isn't proving anything to them. It's showing the people who come after us how to move without asking for permission." Marcus nodded slowly, the words landing heavier than he expected. "You handled it with class," he said. "If it were me, I don't know." "That's the thing," Elijah said. "You don't have to know. You just have to remember this." He leaned in slightly. "Never trade your composure for someone else's ignorance. If they misjudge you, let them. But make sure the space you build, your company, your name, your team, never makes anyone else feel like they don't belong." Marcus didn't speak. He didn't have to. That's what it meant to lead. You don't yell at the wall, you build a door somewhere else. Elijah tapped the folder on Marcus's lap. "What's in here?" "Oh," Marcus said, blinking back into work mode. "Updated proposal from the behavioral data team, based on your notes from last week." Elijah opened it, flipped through the pages. "Good," he said. "Let's pull the team together after lunch." Marcus stood to leave but paused at the door. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For showing us how to move without ever lowering yourself." Elijah nodded once, quiet. Then Marcus slipped out, and the door closed behind him. Outside, the city kept moving. Nothing looked different, but something was, because this story, this small, still stand, was already echoing. It wasn't just about one man or one hotel. It was about every room people walk into, where someone looks up and only sees half the story. It was about the quiet ways power can speak, about rewriting the rules without ever picking up the pen they tried to hand you. If it landed somewhere deep for you, hold on to it. And when you step into rooms that weren't built for you, step in anyway and take up space.